is Melanie Layton, the CEO of Titan Minerals with the ticker code TTM. So Titan is making serious moves in Ecuador's copper and gold rich Andean belt. And Titan's Dynasty Gold Project hosts a multi-million ounce resource with expansion drilling underway. And Lindero's copper project is also backed by a major JV with Hancock Prospecting, Han Rain. To tell us more, I'm going to hand you over to Mel.
Thanks, Jane. Thanks for the introduction. And I admit a tough act to follow with Alex at Aura there. Sounds like they're kicking goals and getting some great intersections. But what I would say is that although our projects are on the other side of the world in Ecuador, we've kind of got a resource base of 3.1 million ounces of gold as opposed to 280,000 ounces of gold. So a very different scale and a very different prospect. So I will talk a little bit more about our projects and what we're doing there. So I will just share my presentation. Okay, well, I will continue on. So as just discussed, 3.1 million ounce resource base at Dynasty, but really what we're looking to do is to grow our project to a plus 5 million ounce gold project in Ecuador. So, look, we have a number of projects in Ecuador, but it's fair to say that the Dynasty Gold Project is our flagship asset, and it certainly is the project that we've been dedicating most of our funding and most of our attention to over these past few years. I think, while the market wasn't watching, while the gold price was floundering, we were very busy drilling and expanding our understanding of the Dynasty Gold Project and put out a resource back in July 23, pretty substantial resource, obviously, and I think at the time really was largely ignored by the market. So a little bit frustrating on our part, but what it has done over the past few years is we've continued to grow our understanding and to grow our project and the work that we're doing there. And I guess late last year in December, we did a substantial cap raise. We raised $20 million, very well supported by our existing major shareholders, Tribeca being one of them. So now we have really great funding in place to continue on and grow that 3.1 million ounce resource base to really something that we think could be far larger than that before we get into sort of the de-risking and development studies at the Dynasty project. Outside of Dynasty, we also have a number of copper projects, and I'll try not to talk to them too much, but it really does, I guess, represent a large part of our value proposition, particularly the Linderos copper project, where we've entered into a joint venture and earn-in agreement with Hancock Prospecting subsidiary company Han. They are earning up to 80% of our Linderos copper project by spending up to 180 million Australian dollars. So a significant joint venture agreement and a significant, I guess, endorsement of our copper project and also the capability of our team in Ecuador and what we've been able to demonstrate at that project alone. We consider ourselves a relatively, I guess, first mover in Ecuador. We have been there since we acquired these projects in 2020. Largely were locked out of the country during 2020 and started doing our exploration and drilling efforts in 21. So we've done a lot of work over the last 3 to 4 years and are very well placed now, I guess, to capitalize on the very buoyant gold market and also copper market as well. So at our 4 projects, we have a number of drill targets, and we've got drill rigs spinning at the Dynasty project, the Linderos project, and soon to be the Copper Duke project as well. So a lot of news flow to deliver across our projects this year, largely from drilling. Look, I won't go into too much in terms of the board, but I guess Peter Cook is our chairman. I'm a geologist, a lot of experience in both Australian Archean gold, but also South American copper porphyry epithermal gold systems. Barry Bourne is a geophysicist is also on our board, and Matt Carr is actually an exec director, and he's the one that identified the assets back at PDAC in 2019. So very well credentialed board, certainly got the skill set, at this stage in terms of exploration and development of our large scale projects in Ecuador. And Ecuador, we have found to be a fantastic place to operate. The government are very much supportive of mining in Ecuador. Currently, there are 2 large-scale mines in operation. Fruta del Norte is being run by Lundin Gold. They are now capped at about 12 billion Canadian off that single asset that they're producing gold from. And then the Mirador copper mine as well is a very, I guess, profitable copper mine that's been mined out of Ecuador also. And we're largely starting to see quite a bit more M&A in Ecuador as well. Recent investments being the acquisition of the Lumina Gold, which owned the Cangrios project just to the north of our Dynasty project. And that was about 650,000 Canadian acquisition of that company. And also Sol Gold, I guess a number of us are familiar with Sol Gold and their work in Ecuador. They recently had a new, an increase in position from Jiangxi Copper on their register as well. So certainly seeing a lot more investment and, some very opportunistic, I guess, investors getting hold of these, great large scale assets that are in Ecuador at this point in time. So Dynasty itself is a very large project. It's a 9+ kilometre epithermal gold system, of which we've drilled probably less than half of it, and down to a depth of about 400 metres at the deepest. Mineralisation extends from surface. As you can see, the numbers on the right there, almost 44 million tonnes of at 2.23 grams per tonne gold and 15.7 grams per tonne silver. So certainly a very high grade ore body in this day and age, particularly with the fact that it extends from surface. But within that, there's also a high grade component of mineralisation, grading close to 3.8 grams. We've got more than 17 million tonnes of that material for a bit over 2 million ounces of gold. The bulk of the mineralisation, I'm just going to turn my pointer on if this will work for me. The bulk of the mineralisation sits down here at the Cerro Verde prospect. So there's almost 2 million ounces sitting down here. And very much it looks like from the optimisation work that we've done, 0.5 gram per tonnes looks to be the optimal, resource cutoff grade, but also, the lower optimal mining cutoff grade for open pit mineralisation there. So what we're seeing is a very large open pit that wants to open up here at Cerro Verde from the resource that we've, established so far. Quite a large pit also here at Iguana, and a series of smaller open pits followed by underground development across the project also. But I guess from our perspective, we're not quite done yet with the resource build out. So our focus very much at this point in time is growing the resource, understanding what the scale of the project really can be, getting it to that 5 million ounces, and then launching into those detailed feasibility studies. So as you can see from the long section that I'm showing on the right of the page here, effectively drilling stops at about this point in this part of the deposit, so down at about 400 metres vertical. And over here we've drilled to the very deepest part down to 600 metres, and this would be effectively the deepest hole in the system. No drilling in this area, no drilling here, certainly no drilling out to the edges over here. So effectively open at depth. And these drill hits here from CVDD 24122 are probably, I guess, a really good proof of concept that there was no drilling there previously, and we were able to intersect a number of high grade and wide intersections, 13 metres at 4.5 grams, 5 metres at 5.5 grams down here. So very much demonstrating the system is open and that the grades are a very good grade still. And so I guess from our perspective, with the funding that we now have in place, it's really about drill testing those extensions to mineralisation and demonstrating, what we think could be a much larger ore body. Very much supported by our major shareholders, in that strategy, and that's certainly what we're doing. So we can look forward to a considerable amount of news flow coming from drill results out of the Dynasty project in the coming, 3 to 6 months. Outside of that, we are working towards a resource update mid this year. We've already done close to 10,000 metres of resource growth drilling over the past 6 months or so. So there's a bit of work to be done there in terms of getting that resource completed, but certainly we intend to put that out in the next couple of months. So what we've also been doing behind the scenes, besides growing the resource at Dynasty and understanding what it can be, we also wanted to complete some de-risking studies and answer some key questions for the project as well. And what we were able to do with some preliminary metallurgical test work is demonstrate that we're getting very good recoveries both in the oxide and the sulfide or the fresh mineralization. Oxide is a standard, CIL, cyanide leach. We're getting about high 80% recoveries at a relatively coarse grind for the oxide material. And with the sulfide material, what we've seen is that we can float it, we can produce a concentrate, getting more than 90% recovery at a 75 micron grind. And we're able to direct sell that concentrate to a smelter, or if we choose to fully process it on site, we can oxidize it, leach it, and then produce doré bars on site. And again, still achieving, plus 90% recovery with those options as well. But important to note, quite preliminary, that test work, and a lot of opportunities identified to improve recoveries with further test work. So, we think we can certainly do better than what we've done to date. So just moving on to the copper projects briefly, which I think is a large part, as I said earlier, of our value proposition. So securing Hancock as a partner has been fantastic for us. We executed the deal in September last year. They commenced the first phase of their earn-in commitment, which is 10,000 meters of drilling, in November last year. They're about 3/4 of the way through that drill program, and just last week we put out an announcement which published the results for the first 4 holes. So Linderos itself has a number of porphyries at it, but the Copper Ridge porphyry is the one that we had drilled. We'd put about 4,000 meters of drilling into it back in 22 and 23. We demonstrated large-scale copper porphyry mineralization from surface over an area of about 500 meters at surface down to about 400 meters depth. The geochem and the geophysical anomalies are much larger, but drill-defined mineralization covered that area for us. And what Hancock have been able to do with their drilling, of that first 10,000 meter campaign of drilling, is effectively drill it from surface down to about kilometre depth, showing that mineralization certainly extends at least down to 800 meters in this area, but is very much open, to the west and to the east here, as you can see. And what they've also been able to do is, our drilling was just in this area here. They've been able to extend mineralization out to a much larger area, more like a 1 kilometre footprint laterally and at depth. And we can see that it's still open. And what they've been able to identify is there's quite a large northwest-southeast corridor here, and it's very much open. And we also have the Meseta Gold Prospect here, which is about 1 kilometre in strike length, and some very decent gold numbers were returned from that prospect as well when we drilled it back in 22. And what the geophysical survey looks like and what the drilling looks like so far is that the porphyry mineralization extends under. This is the Meseta Gold Prospect here where we've drilled at surface. Looks like the porphyry probably continues out here at depth as well. And as we generally understand, and most people agree, I guess copper porphyries generally have quite a large gold credit that goes with them as well. So certainly a lot of gold to come out of the Linderos Copper Project. And the intent for Hancock is, once they complete their 10,000 meter drilling campaign in the next month or so, they will then launch into the next drilling campaign, which is 15,000 meters of drilling in addition. And once they've completed that, they will have earned 51% of the project. We get another cash payment of $1 million. And then they continue on with all of the work and development studies required to get it to a decision to mine to earn that 80%. Look, if we elect not to contribute beyond that 80% and we dilute below 10%, we still retain a 2.7% NSR across the entire project. So no matter what Hancock define or whatever they ultimately mine, Titan and our shareholders still, have really great exposure to, what the potential upside could be from this project. So Ecuador, which probably I can imagine most of the calls today were from more local gold projects in Western Australia or Australia. But yeah, Ecuador is a very large scale prospect in terms of gold projects. There's my Ecuadorian news popping up. And so that's why we're there, really. We're there for the big prize. The Andean copper belt is, very prolific in terms of copper and gold endowment. It runs from Chile in the south right through to Colombia in the north. And Ecuador, I guess, represents a screaming gap in terms of exploration and development and mining of projects in Ecuador. I touched on it earlier. London Gold are over here. They're about 150 kilometres to the east of our project. And they've been able to demonstrate that, a large scale gold operation in Ecuador can be extremely profitable. And both the London Gold and the Mirador copper mine contribute significantly to the GDP of Ecuador. They were both within the top 10, I guess, taxpayers in Ecuador last year. And clearly the government likes that. So obviously they're very supportive of mining going forward. And recently there was an election just probably less than a month ago in Ecuador. Very pleased that President Noboa, the previous president, was re-elected for a second term, which means that he can continue on with all of that great work that he's doing in providing an environment for both exploration and mining in Ecuador, and protecting, I guess, foreign investment and giving a level of comfort for foreign investors. But as you can see at the bottom of the slide there, I've just highlighted just some of the companies that are currently active in Ecuador. But as you can see, a number of the majors are there, either through direct projects or joint venturing into projects or royalty, offtake. So certainly a level of comfort from all of those majors in Ecuador. And then outside of that, there's a number of TSX listed juniors and mid tiers that are in Ecuador. And the Lumina Gold company, which is just to the north of us, that's the company I was just speaking about earlier, who have just been the subject of a takeover, $650 million Canadian. So certainly you can see there's a lot of appetite for, I guess, exploration and ultimately mining in Ecuador going forward. So a lot of news to deliver for us in 2025. It's certainly been a very busy year to date, and it continues to be busy going forward. So the results of the 10,000 metre resource growth drilling have been coming out over the previous months, and are still some to come in the next month or so. And then what we're really excited about is that deep drilling that we've just commenced at the, I guess, Dynasty Deeps. Very excited to see what that delivers for us, but we're very confident that we'll be able to, the top 300 meters or so of Dynasty, particularly at the Cerro Verde prospect, is quite well drill defined now, but we believe there's a fantastic opportunity below that depth that is very, very much untested, and represents a significant growth opportunity for us at Dynasty. Working towards that resource update, as I mentioned, in the next month or so. And then outside of that, a number of drill programs and work streams happening at our copper projects as well. So news flow to deliver across multiple projects for us. Corporate snapshot, look, we're sitting at around 40 cents at this point in time, about 260 million shares on issue. So market cap bouncing around 110 million dollars Australian. So I think, if you think about the number of large scale projects and what we've been able to do at those projects, clearly I believe there's a bit of a disconnect with our current share price and what we could potentially be. Very well placed in terms of cash balance at the end of quarter, a bit over $17 million. So certainly got a great runway to, I guess, deliver on all of those drilling milestones and de-risking work that's going on at Dynasty as well. Just to round out the presentation and touch on what I believe the value proposition is, and you can see that image on the right. What I'm trying to demonstrate is we put the resource out in July 23. Gold was about $1,900 an ounce at that point in time. Clearly we're almost double that at this point in time in terms of gold price. Unfortunately for us, our share price has gone somewhat sideways. And you can see, when we put that resource out, look at the level of trading. There was no one looking at gold stocks when we were doing the work that we were doing. But what we can see is we're getting far more interest, far better liquidity in our stock. Probably since about September last year, we're starting to see a much better environment for, both us and I guess the rest of the gold junior explorers as well. But, current, value would be about $22 an ounce for our gold resources, given our market cap. No value given to the silver. 22 million ounces of silver is a pretty substantial credit. No value given to the JV deal that we've done at the Linderos project. And, we are set to deliver a number of milestones this year at Dynasty with the cash that we have. And, an exciting backdrop being the increased M&A, both in the gold space, I guess locally, domestically, but also on an international level as well, and particularly in Ecuador, what we're seeing there also. So that rounds out my presentation. Thanks, Jane.
Mel, thank you so much for that. Unfortunately, we've run out of time for any questions, but you kind of answered most of them throughout your presentation anyway.
No
It is,
problem.
it's certainly exciting time. So look forward to hearing more from Titan in the coming weeks.
Amazing. Thank you.